It's a literal tax grab. Add the UK as the latest Western country on the list where the taxman can literally go in and raid your bank account. They say it's to collect past due taxes. I think something more sinister is at stake. I'm going to tell you about this new trend where your taxman can simply take your money. I'm not talking about how the taxman is taking your money through high taxes. We know that the US and Canada and the UK and Australia have some of the highest taxes in the world. That's why Nomad Capitalist helps clients from those companies. You can add Germany and South Africa to the list too. We help clients who want to go where you're treated best. But I'm not talking about the high taxes. I'm talking about how the tax authorities in many Western countries can simply go into your bank account and take money that you owe. English-speaking countries in particular are some of the most heavy-handed in the world when it comes to getting their tax money. Now, before we do this, let me be clear. I am the goody two-shoes of the offshore business. We do help people legally move overseas to reduce their taxes, move their companies overseas, move their assets overseas. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply and learn how to do that. If you don't like the taxes in your country, you should do that. You should pay the taxes that you legally owe until somebody like Nomad Capitalist on our network helps you exit your high-tech system. So none of this is saying don't pay your taxes. However, what we're seeing is more and more heavy-handed enforcement by tax authorities, including when they make mistakes. I'm going to share with you an article from the Telegraph in the UK. The title is HMRC, their tax authority, uses new powers to raid taxpayers' bank accounts directly, saying debt collection will target those who owe more than 1,000 quid. Now, this happened to me when I lived in the United States almost 2 decades ago. I spent half the year in California and half the year in another state, and I had to file a tax return in both states. California's Franchise Tax Board, possibly the most aggressive tax agency in the world, basically cashed my check for the taxes that I owed, and then didn't realize they cashed my check. So one day I wake up and they'd garnished my business bank account, which wasn't even in California, by the way. When I called my lawyer, they said, I don't think that's even legal. But of course, they're the government. They can get away with it. And I had to call and spend hours on hold. And to talk to someone, they have to ask you all sorts of invasive questions. And if you wouldn't answer their invasive questions, they said they'd hang up on you. And only then can you finally say, hey, here's the check you cashed. Why did you garnish my account? Why did you levy my account? And they eventually remedied the issue because I had paid my taxes on time. But imagine if I ran a business that relied on that money to pay suppliers or pay payroll or to live. I would have been screwed. And it showed me the power of the government. Even if when they're wrong, you pay the price. And so not only are you paying ridiculously high taxes, whether it's in California or the UK where this article's from, or Germany where we're seeing more clients from, or Australia where we're seeing more clients from, you're not only paying insane rates of tax, much, much, much higher than you'd pay in any of the places that we help our clients move, but they are among the most heavy-handed when you don't pay the taxes, or even when they think you didn't. Here's what the article says, and then we're going to talk about what you should do. Tax inspectors have already started raiding the bank accounts of those who chose not to pay their bills. HMRC has admitted the taxman can claim money directly from the accounts of debtors who owe more than £1,000 under what are called direct recovery powers. That sounds a little 1984, doesn't it? Direct recovery powers, which were first introduced in 2015 but paused during the pandemic. HMRC, the taxman, said on Monday it reintroduced the strategy in a test and learn phase after being given the powers to do so by Rachel Reeves, who's basically the one who's every time she turns around, your taxes are going up, or they're threatening for your taxes to go up in the UK. This is why I've issued a sell rating on the UK. If you live in the UK, I've been telling you for a year, forget Plan B. You got to move. This Rachel Reeves and the whole crew, they're gonna ruin your country. And yes, if Nigel Farage gets in, maybe they'll stop some of it, but not all of it. I'm issuing a sell rating. The UK, get out. Go where you're treated best. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We help people move to more than 30 tax-friendly countries around the world. One of them will work for you. Tax agents, Telegraph continues, will visit a taxpayer first before any money is taken from their bank account or their cash ISA. I think California has a similar rule. I never got a letter. Maybe they sent it to my old house when I moved. They knew I moved because it was a final tax return. So maybe they sent the letter to the house I used to live in, knowing that I had left. Maybe I don't know what they did. They could have called me on the phone. They didn't send anybody. They just took my money. So the government's going to say something reasonable. But at the end of the day, they screw up. They must also ensure the debtor will be left with at least £5,000 and the timetable for appeals has passed. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't be responsible for your tax affairs. I mean, when I left the United States, I kept a mailbox for 7 years where people could reach me. And so, you should be prepared. But is the government going to put in the effort that's required to make sure that they actually reach you and tell you about the discrepancy? Which, again, maybe they're wrong. Even after leaving the United States, back when I was still a U.S. citizen, we had a U.S. company in our structure. And I got a letter one day saying, you owe us $173,000 because I think PayPal sent them a statement saying how much money we got from PayPal. And they didn't realize, PayPal nor the government, that we had a special structure set up to where we, owed very, very little tax on that money. And we had paid it. And so we resolved it very quickly with the IRS. The IRS never took any of my money. It was all fine. It was solved very quickly because we have a good network of tax professionals in the US and UK and all these countries where we help our clients that resolve these offshore issues very quickly. But there's been numerous times when it's been, hey, you owe us money. And I actually don't owe them money because I am the goody two-shoes of offshore and I don't like paying a lot of tax, but what I do owe, I do pay because that's the right thing to do. And so how many people are going to get hit by this? It's not just in the UK. The IRS can issue what's called a levy on bank accounts if you owe back taxes. No court approval is needed once the standard notice periods expire. Again, do you get the notices? Do they send them out? I had an issue once where, again, never got a notice. They didn't even get the whole return. Banks must comply, freezing and transferring funds to the IRS. Do you think anyone's going to tell the IRS no? Widespread powers, extended wages, pensions, even brokerage accounts. Canada's CRA has the same thing, what's called the requirement to pay powers. It can legally compel a bank to hand over funds from an account, similar in scope to the U.S., but slightly more bureaucratic in process. Australia's ATO, where now, by the way, they want to tax your super. They told you it was your retirement account, but now we're going to change the rules. What have I been telling you for years? They can issue a garnishee notice to banks that allows them to withdraw owed amounts directly, leaving the taxpayer to dispute after the fact. They don't care about you. They just want to grab whatever they can, and they have the power to, and no one's going to stop them. You know what's going to stop them? I'll get to that in a minute. First, let me talk about France. France's tax authority can issue a notice in French and authorize the bank to debit funds straight from an account for unpaid taxes. France has a reputation for aggressive enforcement and property seizures in extreme cases. I had a client, never forget it, 9 years ago. He said the happiest day of my life was selling my property in France and no longer having to deal with the French tax authorities in any way. Germany, very aggressive in Germany. Italy can often quickly apply garnishment if tax debts exceed small thresholds. Even India, where I can tell you, walking around India, I felt like these guys are really dialed in on tax collection. I could just feel it. They're doing more digitization, and they can freeze and debit accounts as well. So you're seeing there's countries like India and South Africa, two of the big ones in the global South that I think have gotten aggressive. Most of the rest are in the West, and some of the most aggressive are in the English-speaking world. Again, let me just be 1,000% clear. Pay the taxes that you owe. If you don't like the taxes that you owe, there's plenty of places that you can go to exit the tax system. Yes, even if you're an American with citizenship-based taxation, there's plenty of places you can go to legally reduce, if not eliminate, your taxes. But while you're there, understand the tax man can grab your stuff. And what you need to know is this is getting worse. The UK is joining this club of sorts. Historically, tax enforcement has relied more on court procedures and due process there before account seizures. But by shifting to direct access, it signals a more U.S.-style enforcement procedure. And I think if you are a successful person, if you're a high net worth individual, you should be very careful about this because it reduces the margin for appeal before your money is taken. So what the governments are basically doing is saying, we're going to have fewer barriers before we just take your money. Some of these Western countries, it's almost shoot first and ask questions later. Listen, when I lived in the U.S., I paid what I owed. I paid a lot. And it bothered me when people skirted the system. In my mind, living overseas for almost a decade and a half now, again, if you don't like the taxes, move. But the fact that government just comes in and grabs your money, and by the way, the U.S., if you owe them too much, they can tell the State Department to cancel your passport or not issue you a passport. Other countries, like the UK, have gone in that same direction. And you may not have ever gotten a notice. Maybe you filed a tax return and it didn't get there because some of these countries, some tax returns, especially for expats, have to be filed by paper. This is not Estonia where everything's digital. Some of these countries are literally in the Stone Ages when it comes to filing taxes, but they're not in the Stone Ages when it comes to taking your money. And so my take on this is the English-speaking world in particular, the Western world to some extent, they're angry their power is going away. They realize people have options, and they're going to keep getting more and more aggressive because they realize people have options. They don't care about your privacy. I read it, if you continue in this Telegraph article, they talk about how cyber attacks are a real risk, and the UK government is keeping more information on its citizens. That's the direction most of these countries are going. Not all. There are countries that are really not that organized. They don't want to be that organized. They actually want to serve their citizens. Those are the kind of countries that we help people move to. Believe it or not every country in the world is like this. There are countries that want you there, that will work with you, that have low taxes. But what I would say is you want to have an offshore bank account. You want to have money outside of the country. Not because you're not going to pay, but because when the government screws up, or when a cyber attack happens, or when they levy money that they weren't supposed to, you actually have some money to take care of yourself, pay your staff, pay your bills. Why do you want all your money in one country where this is what happens and where mistakes are going to happen? Have money offshore. Have, if nothing else, a safety net offshore. One for you, where you have a personal bank account somewhere else where you can pay your bills. You can wire money to American Express to pay your credit card. You've got a debit card from that overseas bank. You can spend money. You have a pile of cash you can use to take care of yourself while you sort things out. And you should have one for your business. I think your business should be offshore in the first place. I think you should be offshore in the first place along with your money. But even if you're not, have some money for your business overseas. You should be hiring people for your business overseas. I don't care if it's just the social media guy. Have people overseas. Have some kind of company to pay them and have that company have money where you don't have to go to business because of a dispute with the government. Again, pay the taxes that you owe and then go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply to where as soon as you get a bespoke plan from us and our network, you can leave your high-tax system and not worry about this anymore. And oftentimes when you leave some of these countries like Australia, you, in many cases, are not going to be keeping your bank accounts there. That's the direction I want you to go. I want you to be living in and running a business from and having your money in jurisdictions, not just one, but multiple jurisdictions where they respect you and they respect your money. Why do you want to stay in these countries where they're out to get you? Why? Because it's comfortable? How comfortable is it when they go in and they take your money? What if the IRS had never sent me that notice, or they made a mistake somewhere, and one day I woke up to $173,000 gone from my bank account? 10 years ago, that would have hurt a lot more than it would have hurt now. And it might have seriously impaired my business. And again, what happened with California could have seriously impaired my business had it been a larger mistake. And so this is the trend around the Western world. Offshore banking for yourself and for your business, and ideally just moving out of these systems entirely. It's not like the U.S. is tax-friendly. I don't care if you live in Florida or Texas with no state tax. You're paying a boatload to the federal government. Canada, taxes are high. Australia, they want to raise them higher. The UK, every day they have some new tax they're proposing. France wants a wealth tax. Germany, high tax. These are the places we're helping people get out of, and then you don't have to worry about this. But just add this as the next nail in the coffin on top of high taxes, high bureaucracy, the right wing that you think is going to lower your taxes. They've stopped. They don't care anymore. They're pandering to factory workers now to get votes, and they want to increase the welfare state. There's no one left fighting for you. There's just going to be more of this. Yes, I run a business where we sell the antidote to this, but I also eat my own dog food. And I left many years ago because I saw this, and I said it's only going to get worse. And it has. It's only going to get worse still.